All right, I've been talking to the man already for a couple seconds here. This is Terry Turbo Stone. Can you confirm this is you, sir?
He's me, yeah.
Awesome, man. Thank you for taking the time to chat. Before we get into this, I have to ask, where did the name Turbo come from?
It came from, I don't know if you remember, like way back, there was a movie called Breakdance the Movie, and there was a character called Turbo in it, and I wasn't a particularly good break dancer, so I think at the time people thought it'd be funny to call me Turbo Terry, which I didn't like, but that was, if you like,
the origin of the name. And you know what? It's always the one you don't like that's going to stick with you for the next 30 years, right?
Yeah. So it was nothing to do with me being a good break dancer. It was more to do with being a bad break dancer.
That's awesome. Do you still dance?
No, not anymore. I could nod my head, and that's about it.
You know what? I'm not at your age yet, but I can't. I think I'd break something. I wouldn't break dance. I'd more like break my back.
Right.
Okay, with that, I think you're in the movie business now, so I wanted to ask you a couple movie questions. In your opinion, what's the best action movie ever made?
I think the difficult thing is there isn't one. People always say, "What's your best movie?" But the reality is, I haven't got a best movie. I've got best movies. So I could give you maybe the top 5, but in no particular order.
Go right ahead.
Okay, Die Hard, Rambo, Commando, just trying to think. Put me on the spot now.
No problem. Take your time, man. It's all good.
Just trying to think.
Let me ask you. Okay, well, let me ask you one sidetrack. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie to you?
I suppose it is and it isn't, but I just think it's one of those great places. It's just one of them great films that I think everybody would like to be Bruce Willis, and do a bit of the old yippee-ki-yay. But of the other 2 movies were Predator and Taken, so that's my my kind of top ones, if you like.
Those are good movies too, and I'm honestly not much of an action movie guy. I'm more of I like a decent script, which sometimes gets voided in action movies. But the ones you named, they're good movies. Those are good movies.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite villain of all time?
God, again, there's probably 5.
You go ahead. I will not put you on the spot to one. Go right ahead.
Yeah. Well, I think you've got to go for Heath Ledger in Batman as the Joker. Yeah. You've got to go for Joe Pesci in Goodfellas. You've got to go for Tony Montana in Scarface. And then I think, I thought Robert De Niro was great in Goodfellas as well.
Yeah.
And then I think the other one would be Marlon Brando in The Godfather.
They're all great roles. The interesting thing is I don't view them as villains, but as you're saying them, that's the thought I thought, and then I'm like, wait a second, these aren't good people. I wouldn't be happy to.
I just think that those actors
amazing
play villains better than probably anybody else. So that's probably more. Yeah, that's more my sort of. If you was going to look at somebody, you kind of go, yeah. If I'm gonna get someone who can play a good villain, it would be there's probably hundreds of other people that could, you could say are better villains, but they're my personal favourites.
All right, and with that, I just wanted to loosen up the talk a little before I dove into industry questions.
Right.
I have to tell my listeners, if you don't know who I'm talking to right now, I have to admit I didn't either before I began digging very deep into the history of the rave, what jungle music is, all this stuff, and I came across this man's name, a name who I should have known because I've known his promotion company for over 20 years. This is the man behind One Nation, Rave Force, I had the lineup here. It's gone down, so I can't rattle off everything. But the one that jumps out the most to me is the One Nation Party.
Yeah.
Terry Stone was around in the beginning days of what we have come to know as our jungle scene. And even talking to some of the pioneers within our scene and bringing his name up to them and asking, I have to admit, a lot of people had not heard of you. You've been gone for a very long time. But with that, I want to ask you about your beginning days so we can try and get to the roots. And I looked a little bit into you. One thing that jumped out to me was the name Stearns. If I'm not mistaken, your first introduction to the rave culture was somewhere named Stearns. Is that correct?
That's right, in the UK, yeah.
Okay.
Because the rave scene in England kicked off in sort of 87, 88, and it was all illegal parties, people dancing in fields. That was kind of, the rave scene, if you like. And the drum and bass, breakbeat, jungle scene, whatever you want to call it, didn't really get going until around 93. And that point, I'd created this name, One Nation, and we started off, that was the first event, December 93. So this year, in December, One Nation is 25 years old, and it's the longest going, jungle promotion. I won 4 or 5 awards for best promoter. We were doing, I'd say, on average, 20 events a month all around the world. So we were definitely the biggest, if not, we were the biggest promotions company. I was the biggest promoter, and I kind of sold up in 2003 because I wasn't getting any younger, and I just thought, actually, I'm 31. I've got a chance to actually go out and do something else, as I didn't want to be 40, and still putting raves on in warehouses, listening to drum and bass. So that was one of the reasons why I sold it.
That's why you let go of the promotion company.
Just because I met. I've always said this. The scene, if you like, is it's a young man's game, right? And I didn't want to be an old man trying to put on events for whether you like it or not. Most of the people that go to these events are young, and when I say young, I'm talking, even though they shouldn't be going, 16 to probably 30. If you're going past that, you're an old timer. But that was and the thing is, I think it, because I met my wife and I started having children, and I started settling down, going out raving and being out till 6, 7 in the morning, 3 or 4 times a week wasn't as appealing to me as it was when I was single in my 20s. So
I get you.
That was one of the reasons why I decided to get out of it. And also in England, there was a huge rise in gun crime, and we had a lot of problems with drive-by shootings. I mean, bearing in mind that in England we don't have, you can't carry a firearm. Even if you've got a firearms license, you can't carry a firearm around. So it's the fact people had these illegal firearms and were using them, was pretty sort of scary. And probably around the time I was looking to sell, there was the garage scene had kind of evolved into this what they call grime music, and that took a lot of the heat and the people out of that sort of jungle scene. And what happened was they all then got into what was known as the grime scene. And what happened then was all the police and the authorities and the club owners pretty much just turned around and said, look, we're not having this anymore. We're not having people doing this stuff. So what would happen is that they would actually vet, if you was going to put a night on, they say, okay, what music are you playing? What DJs are going to be playing? So you'd have this kind of weird scenario where if certain DJs were playing, or if if the music you were playing wasn't what the authorities wanted to be played, they wouldn't let you have a license. So putting on events become a lot harder, and the scene sort of changed in England around that period of time. And a lot of people said to me when I sold it at the right time. But the people that bought it, it probably took them 8 or 9 years before it kind of come back to how it was. And then obviously the festivals came along and become this like phenomena. Then you had people like Sigma, Ed Rush, DJ Fresh, DJ Hype, Andy C, all these DJs and these MC group called SAS, all started sort of blowing up, and the scene kind of just blew up, and you had Rita Ora and Birdie and Take That, and all these kind of pop stars, if you like, embracing the music and being involved in the music, and then before you know it, drum and bass starts becoming top of the charts all around the world. So if I'd have stayed in the game, what it is now, it's obviously become huge again. But when I started, it's kind of on down with all these things, things come and go, things are hot, things are not, new people come in. I mean, that's just how it is. So,
Well, you know what, Terry? I let you talk there, and you went through like about 4 or 5 of the questions I was going to ask. You answered in what you just said.
Oh, perfect. Can I go now?
All right, it's been nice talking to you. No, I want to pull back a little and dig into some of the things you said. I want to provide context in a sense, because I think we're taking for granted the listeners understand everything that you're diving into and all of what you just said.
Okay.
One thing we never felt over here, for instance, people in Canada don't know the difference between jungle and drum and bass. They think it's two different musics. We're not familiar with the ruffian aspect, the fact that you guys started changing the name of parties because you didn't want to have mobs.
Well, it wasn't changing the name of parties. It was I tell you what it was. It was the music. It was down to we were very lucky because we were called One Nation. So One Nation, sounds like a happy vibe, and that was the intention. That's why I chose the name. But there was a lot of other events that were called Jungle This or Jungle That, or and I think essentially, if you had an event with jungle in it, you were getting shut down, and the police actually sort of had names of DJs and MCs, and they pretty much said if you book these people and they play at your event, you're not having a license. So you can't really promote properly if you've got somebody telling you what to do. The whole point of putting on an event is you were creative, and you come up with a night, you come up with a lineup. You chose. You would have promoted. You chose what the lights, the lasers, the sound system, the DJs, the MCs, the PA if there was going to be one. So you had that whole thing going on, and that for me was what it was all about. And if you've got somebody saying, well, sorry, you can't book these DJs or these MCs, it's like your creativity is being stifled. So that was another reason for sort of falling out of love with it, really.
Yeah, I can't imagine what that would have felt like if somebody's handcuffing you like that. One of the things I noticed about you amongst all other promoters is it sounds like you came into the industry in a time where there was no organization or professionalism, and you brought a sense of those things. You, like you just described, about understanding all the things you need to bring to the venue to make it more of an enjoyable experience for the raver. Your party was the first one to really do that, and one of the things you experienced, if I'm not mistaken, you talked about drive-bys and stuff. You're speaking hypothetically, but didn't that specifically happen to you? Did you not have guns pulled on you at the door?
Yeah, for sure. But it was much later on. It wasn't in the beginning. It was towards the end. It was the last year of putting these events on, where you had these things happen, and it wasn't necessarily anything to do with me. It was to do with the scene. It was to do with the fact that the people that were being attracted to the scene were, if you imagine, if 5,000 people and none of these events were in nice areas. So, I don't know where in Canada you kind of called the hood, but a lot of these events were in the hood. So, you'd be in places like Hackney, Brixton, Tottenham, Birmingham, Manchester, which, are dangerous places. And, you'd be putting an event on for 5,000 or 10,000 people, and all the undesirables would know there's going to be 5,000 or 10,000 people at that place. So if you were criminally minded, you could go there, you could sell drugs, you could mug people, you could rob people, you could get up to all sorts of stuff. So, for them it was like, okay, we're going to go and earn some money. And obviously we're there going, well, actually, no, you're not, because this is their event. So you always had that kind of threat of danger and aggravation. But, we didn't really have that much trouble compared to a lot of the other promoters. But the last year of doing the events, it got silly, and it got to the point where people started saying, is it worth the money? And you start asking yourself that, because, if you're putting on an event and, somebody might shoot you, or one of your friends might get shot, you do start thinking, do I really want to do this anymore? And as I said, I had 3 close shaves where people actually pulled firearms out, and
3.
Thank God, nobody actually pulled a trigger and shot anybody, but it could have happened, and I could have been on the receiving end of it. And I think once I'd met, my wife, and she was pregnant, I started thinking about things differently, and I was just thinking, do I want to do this when I'm 40? And the answer was probably not. So, I think in life you have to know when to quit when you're ahead. I've done everything. I'd won all the awards. I'd created a great brand. We were doing albums with, people like Sony and Universal, BMG, and people like that. So we were doing all these, music albums. We were travelling around the world. We had all these clubs. We won a load of awards. So, it was really, the only reason for me to have stayed in that business was just to carry on earning money. It wasn't. There was nothing left to achieve, and I think that's the problem with, some people are quite happy just to sit there and take the money. But I think, as I said, I've been sitting there taking the money for, however many years it was, and I just got to the point where I just thought, actually, I wouldn't mind trying something new. And I just thought, I've got time. When you're 31, setting up a new business and starting again is a lot easier than when you're 40 or when you're 50. So I didn't want to be the oldest swinger in town. So that was one of the reasons why I decided really to sort of sell out.
Yeah, I hear you. And the reason why I give it context is a bunch of my listeners, I promise you, are over the age of 40 and are still promoting, right. But they're not facing the same atmosphere that you describe. I find when I talk to a lot of people in the UK, what they describe is different, unless they've been exposed to our scene by touring. When they describe
I think I went out recently because obviously at the moment we're filming a documentary called King of Clubs, which is based on a book that I wrote.
You know what, Mike? Hold on, Terry. I got to stop you. My second last question is: any plans on your book, King of Clubs, becoming a movie?
Right. Okay. Well, there's a couple of things here, right? So when I come out of the business, what happened was someone said, "Oh, you've had such an amazing journey from being sort of like this kid on a council estate, or I think you call it welfare in Canada,
yeah.
You've come from that. You've built this brand out of nothing. You've made a successful business. You've done well. You've created something, and and as I said, the brand I created and the scene that I was involved in building from the beginning is 25 years old this year. So that's a long time for any dance music to and it's just evolving. But I think what's happened now is we filmed because I wrote the book. I wasn't going to write a book, and then after a couple of years and people saying, "Oh, you should write a book," I wrote a book, and it was an Amazon bestseller called King of Clubs by Terry Turbo, and it's still available now. Sold a load of copies all around the world, and then somebody came out of the woodwork and said, "Oh, like to turn this into a movie." So we went, "Okay, great, but before we do that, we actually wouldn't mind doing a documentary first." And there's a potential TV series here as well. So what we didn't want to do is just do a film, and then, with films they can either fail, or they can be a big success. And then obviously if it's a failure for whatever reason, you can sort of kiss goodbye to doing anything else. But the good thing, the documentary we're making at the moment, it spans the whole scene, and we've got everybody in it, from DJ Fresh to Sigma to Hype to Andy C to Groove Rider to Fabio. I mean, every DJ and MC that's worth their soul, we've interviewed, and they've all got fantastic memories, stories, and we've captured something really special. And obviously, where we filmed all of the footage from the early One Nations, we've got all the archive footage. So we're cutting together now a documentary which will be to celebrate 25 years of the drum bass scene, and we're talking to people about that now, and that could come out later this year. So once that's come out, the next step will be then looking at a TV series spin-off or a film or both.
That's awesome, man. I'm really excited to see it. I was excited to see that you had written a book. To hear you say right now that you're doing a documentary, a film with possible TVs, this is awesome. And all the names you're mentioning are the people that we want to hear from. So,
yeah, the film would be, similar to the book, in that it'd be sort of, this is, the journey, and how I got from A to B to C. But the good thing about a documentary is it's about me and One Nation, and obviously what I've done. But it's also about the scene, it's also about the people in the scene, it's their stories, their experiences. So it's a real kind of VIP access into that world. And some of the stories we're such a laugh doing filming all the interviews, and a lot of these people I haven't seen for 15 years. So we're interviewing people this year in January and February, and people are sort of going, "You haven't changed, you've just got hair now." And we're all laughing about it. And last year we filmed at a One Nation festival, and there was like 20,000 people at this festival. And the thing about the violence and all the trouble, that's kind of gone out of it now. This was a problem, in the early 2000s, and I think it was just because the scene had grown so big. And it's like anything. If something becomes sort of fashionable or cool, you get everybody wanting to be in it, but then you also get the other people that you probably wouldn't want in it, and then they don't behave themselves, and that's where you get the kind of friction and the trouble. But as I said, I went to this event last year, which was a big festival, and it seems to me there's not that many clubs now in England, but that hold these drum bass events. When I was doing it, there was probably 20 up and down the country, and they're all like 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 capacities. But what's happened now is you've got a festival nearly every other week, or sometimes you have 2 festivals a week, all up and down the country, all over the world. And it just seems that there's a drum and bass jungle tent, and the music is just exploding. I mean, it's just not getting any smaller. It just seems to be evolving. So, I'm glad I was there at the beginning, and it's exciting to see something that I've created still going strong, and the scene, still going strong, and all the people that I used to work with have all become, I don't want to call them pop stars, but
they're successful.
They're all making #1 hit records. They're all touring the world. It's just amazing to see it. And then when you meet up with them, to me and me to them, it's just like a couple of friends that haven't really, we just haven't seen each other for a few years. Whereas, if you didn't know, if you didn't have that relationship and that history, you wouldn't, because a lot of these people, I was booking them when they first started off. They were sending me mixtapes of them mixing and saying, please can I DJ at your event? And to see them from that point, in 93, 94 to now, they're sort of, making #1 hit records and, flying around the world. It's just amazing. I mean, it's really good to see,
I can't imagine. Like, do you have anyone that stands out to you? I have to ask, like a Nicky Blackmarket or an Andy C, where you can go, I remember when he gave me his first mixtape, I had him spin at my...
The thing is, all of them. I mean, they all
of them.
The only DJs that started off, the ones that were big in the rave scene were Fabio, Groove Rider, Jumping Jack Frost. Those guys, Top Buzz. Those were the guys that were around, back in the day, if you like, in 88, 89. And then when the early breakbeat sort of drum and bass stuff kicked off, that's what they were playing it. So they become the DJs you book. LTJ Bookham was another name. And then, everybody, I remember, being at the Rocket in Holloway Road and seeing DJ Hype on the decks, and he was just cutting and scratching up his records, and I was like, this is unbelievable. I've never seen anybody do this before. And I said, you haven't got any demo tapes, have you? And he went, yeah. He's one of my demo tapes. And then when I did I think it was the second My Nation, I booked him. And back in '93, he was DJing out, but he wasn't, the big name that he is today. So it's funny how you meet people early on in their careers, and at the time I recognised he was an amazing talent, but he's now selling out events. I mean, he's got his own night at Brixton Academy, and he's selling out 5,000 people in Brixton Academy with just him DJing.
He's an awesome guy too.
Which is amazing, and back in the day when I was putting events on, if a DJ turned around and said, I'm going to put an event on a DJ all night, people would say, well, who wants to see that? But now people do want to see it because he's their favourite DJ. So, if he can take them on that journey for 8 hours, be doing all his cutting and scratching and mixing, then, people will pay for that. And so I think that the whole scene has evolved and changed. And I think as the new generation come along, what they want to see and what they want to experience is obviously a lot different to, maybe some of the old timers. So I think the new wave of drum and bass and the new way of experiencing it, a lot of it's online now, the music. I know the vinyl's making a comeback, but, in the old days it used to just be vinyl and cassettes. Now it's MP3s and the occasional CD. So it is really interesting how it's kind of evolved to that, really.
Well, and you know what? It's definitely come almost full cycle because, like you said, vinyl's becoming cool again. People, I actually just had new shirts made that say Ixnay CDJ Vinyl Lover.
Right.
And yeah, they're getting a good response. People are, I love that. I'm like, okay, I got to make more of these things. But okay, with that, I got two last questions for you. We kind of went away from this, but I want to bring it back. I think it's an important question for me. When you formed One Nation, what was your mission statement?
It was there was a song, an old soul song called One Nation Under a Groove, and I think it's Funkadelic that sung it. And I think it was in the 70s it came out, and it was and the lyrics kind of went, One Nation, One Nation under a groove, we're getting down just for the funk of it. And then it says One Nation, we're on the move. And I don't know why, it just stuck in my head. And then when I was thinking of a name for an event, I was just thinking, what do I want to create? And I wanted to create an event where anybody could come to it. It didn't matter what colour, what creed, what religion, what race. I didn't care. It was just come along, have a really great night, and listen to some good music. So that was, if you like, what I wanted to achieve. And that's why it was One Nation. And on the flyers, we used to put one love, one vibe, one nation. So that was their kind of tagline. And, after the second event, people started buying into it and they liked it. And, I don't like to use the word overnight success, because it wasn't an overnight success, and I made money, I lost money. A couple of the events went really well, a couple of them broke even, but even up to when I sold it, I was still making money on some, losing money on the others. So I'd never perfected on how to promote an event and always get it right and always make money, and everyone would always be happy. So you did fall over occasionally, but I think when you're experimenting with stuff and you're trying to push the boundaries on things, you have to take risks, and I think sometimes the risks pay off, and other times people say, I didn't really like that, so I think that was something that I did, and I was always learning, but I think towards the end I'd achieved everything and there was nothing further for me to do, and that was why I sort of went, maybe now's the time to draw a line under it and move on, and that's why I sold it. It was more to do with that than I didn't not like the music or not like the scene, but I just got to the point where I was thinking, do I want to be doing this when I'm 40? Do I really want to be in this this world?
Well, it's also, like I say, much more violent. Like I say, if I was experiencing the things you're experiencing, I'm 34 myself, and if I, at this age, like I have a regular 9-to-5 job, jungle music and what I do within it is a hobby. It's not even the people out here that are making a lucrative career out of it are doing it 300 days a year on tour, on the road. And I'm like, that lifestyle's not for me. We don't have a sustainable industry here where you can open up a weekly, like you're describing with DJ Hype, that would be self-sufficient. That we don't have the crowd here to do such a thing.
Right.
So we have to have secondary jobs. But like I say, if I had the violent aspect of the culture that you describe, I don't know if I would love it as much as I do. But
No.
I have to say, before I get into the last question here, I have to say that years ago, when I was about, I don't know, we're talking probably 18 years ago, I was probably 15, 16 years old, and I was talking about a dream party. I described it to somebody. It would have everybody I loved on it, and it was basically an innovation set. And a friend of mine at the time went, "You're talking about a One Nation party." And I said, "What is that?" And they told me, I remember this is before the internet was where you could probably look it up nowadays, but they started describing to me, and everybody at the time, there were probably 5 of them, gathered around, and everyone told me their story of what a One Nation was. And none of them knew. Here's the thing. We were all kids in the playground. All we knew was what we had heard from other people talk about what One Nation was. Whether it was MC Det doing his wah, 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 One Nation, right? But it was like, what is this thing? So your name became synonymous with the best party on earth. So it was, when I got into my later days, which I did become a promoter later, it was always, let's try and make our party, let's emulate One Nation. What does that mean? Let's just throw the best fucking party we can. And that's
what we try to do. That was always the intention, always. That was always what we wanted to do. That was their mission statement, really.
That's it. Well, and you know what? Thank you for inspiring so many. Okay, with that, last question, and then I'll let you go. I appreciate all the time you've taken.
I appreciate the interview. It's good to talk to someone on the other side of the pond about it.
That's awesome, and thank you, Terry. Okay, with that, this is kind of be tricky, I guess, for you because you've been out for a bit, but let me ask you, if you could put 5 items in a vault that would encapsulate our rave culture, what would those 5 items be?
I'd say a mixtape can it be a my event or can it be someone else's event?
Say that again?
Can it be is it something to do with One Nation or is it something to do with something else?
Anything to do with the rave. If you want it to be 100% One Nation, by all means, but no, anything rave.
Well, I think what I'd do is I'd definitely get a hard copy of my book or a digital copy of my book, because if anybody if it ever died out and if people forgot about it, and then the kids in 50 or 100 or 200 years time wanted to know what this rave stuff was all about, I would say, well, you need to read this book, because in the book it gives you a graphic account of how it all started and how big it got, and as I said, there's that was only the first 10 years. It's been going for another 15 years, so it's now 25 years old this year. So, it could be 30 years, it could be 40 years. So, for me, it's the biggest dance movement. I mean, it's bigger than rock and roll, it's bigger than punk, it's bigger than a lot of these things. And, that's why I think it's so important. So, I definitely say, the book, I would definitely get a DVD of, one of the big, whether it was One Nation or whether it was 2 or 3 big events, just so that there was some video footage. So you've got the book to read about it. You've got the video footage you can see. I would definitely want to put some of the vinyl tracks in a vault as well, so that if 2 turntables were still around, people could actually play a vinyl record and actually hear what it sounds like. Because by the time these things, in 50 years' time, there probably won't be any MP3s, any CDs, any cassettes, any vinyl, anything. It'll probably be some other way of listening to music. So I think being able to let people hear it or experience it how it used to be would be quite a gift. And then the final thing is, I think I would like to put a I don't know if you ever heard any of the One Nation tape packs.
Oh yeah, of course,
Right, okay. So basically,
hold on, Terry. I gotta ask. Do you still have any of those tape packs?
Of course, yeah.
I gotta get one of those. You gotta get me one of those. I would love to get my hands on one of your tape packs.
Yeah, I mean the only problem is nobody's got a cassette player now to play.
I will buy a cassette player. I'll go to the flea market and get a cassette player so I can rock some old school One Nation tapes.
So I think that's what you'd need. You'd have the mix. So we used to record the night. So you'd have 8 tapes of Hype, Andy C, Groove Rider, Fabio. You'd have all these people DJing live with the MCs. So I think to actually experience it properly, you can watch it visually on the video. You can read the book and read the story on how it was all created. But I think actually listening to 8 cassettes, of a One Nation party, or it could be any party. It doesn't have to be One Nation, but I think that is the magic. To actually hear the mixing, hear the crowd. It was an amazing time.
When you would record those, Terry, how did you do it? Did you do it through the mixer, or did you actually record with an external?
Yeah, it was just plugged in at that tape. That tape was just plugged in, and they just press record, and that was it.
Gotcha. That's why, because I remember some of the tapes you get.
That was a good promotional tool for us because because you had every single all the DJs were playing like dub plates and limited edition music, so you just had all this amazing music being played, and you had people going, wow, what's this, and they go into record shops and say, oh, I need this track, and then so it would boost the record sales. It made the DJs famous all around the world. It also meant that the people that couldn't get into these events, that were maybe 11 or 12 years of age, could buy the mixtapes and listen to the mixtapes, and then that drew them into the scene. And then when they were old enough to go, that was where they were coming, because they wanted to experience it live. So, I think all that stuff, it just added to it.
Well, yeah, and I'm a product of it, to be honest, Terry. I heard jungle music long before I could was allowed. Well, it was actually, I got into hardcore music before I got into jungle music, but I was too young to listen to it, and it was very special to take in the culture for the first time. I said to somebody else, just the way that we used to go to parties, you didn't know where you were going. There was a map or a hotline, and you get there, and everybody was kind of a part of something. You knew that you had been invited. It wasn't just a bunch of people who showed up somewhere. This is a community of people, right? And you felt special. You felt somewhat elite or a part of a group. And we've lost that over the years. But hopefully in time, there are some promoters that are trying to bring it back. I don't know if it's just nostalgia or because they're sick of the stock system that comes with renting a club. Like, to do what you used to do, to rent a facility and populate it with the sound system, bring in the lasers, bring in the lights, bring in the smoke system, bring in everything that's going to make that place entertaining. It's somewhat been lost through time, which I know at one point it was cool. I think I heard you quoted saying that it's actually a state of progression. You don't know if it's better or worse. It's just different. But I think it's gotten worse because our music isn't built for stock sound systems. Our music is built for big sound systems. And we need that. We need promoters. And also you talk about the younger group. By putting it into 19 plus clubs, we're losing our all ages crowd. And we're getting older. Like, we need the younger crowd. So anyways, with that, I want to say, Terry, thank you so much for taking the time to talk.
It's good to talk to you, Aaron. And I look forward to hearing it when it goes out.
I will let you know when it comes out, and hopefully you'll talk again sometime. I'm going to get my setup a little bit better, and hopefully in the next few months you'll talk again.
Well, as I said, the documentary is going to be released later this year, and for anybody who wants to know, where it all started and how it all started, and the trials and tribulations of the rave scene, and that they've got to read the book. I mean, the book's a fun read, and
the book is King of Clubs. Is the documentary King of Clubs as well?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so the documentary is called King of Clubs: The One Nation Story, and it's going to basically be a 25-year, journey into drum and bass. So it's just specifically for that music. Even though I promoted other music, this documentary is just about the drum and bass music. The documentary. So it's a One Nation bespoke doc. The actual book that I wrote is also about that. I think the documentary is going to probably be airing. It'll either be on. I don't know what sort of release it'll have in the States and Canada, but if Netflix gets it, obviously it'll be on Netflix. If Netflix don't get it, it'll be on Amazon. But it will end up on one of those platforms. But again, I will post the stuff on my social media, so anybody that's interested can find out when that's going to come out. And the book's on Amazon and iTunes anyway, so if people can't wait for the documentary, they can always read the book.
That's all. Or hey, you know what? Maybe we should do an audio copy. We got to get you to read your book so we can do an audio version of your book.
People have asked me to do that, and that's
you
something
should.
that I'm going to probably do, but I've not had a chance to do it yet. But it's on my to-do list, Alan.
Terry, if I could give you some of it. Here's the thing: nobody ever listened to me when I used to speak. Now I started a podcast that can stream. I get hundreds of people listening to me all of a sudden. And I don't know why. It's like if I record it, they can play it in the car, and all of a sudden they listen to me. So there's something to be said about the audio version of anything we want people to either read or... I don't know what it is, man. It honestly, and I've even said the same about a song. It's like if you try to preach to people, everyone tells you to shut up, but then you put it into the words of a song, and people are like, I love that song. I was saying the same shit. But what, I sing it to you? It's okay? But anyways, yes, once again, Terry, thank you.
All right, no.
And
good to talk to you.
It was great talking to you too, sir. Have a good evening.
Thanks for listening.
Of course, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Care.
All right, ciao.
See you later. Bye.
All right, that was him, Mr. Turbo Terry Stone. Guys, I gotta say, I was really excited. I got a little nervous before I had to talk to him because I'm not lying when I say I grew up kind of idolizing his promotion company. And although he's not an entertainer, I think I've gotten more used to talking to entertainers, and I got somewhat fanboyish, I have to admit, when I was like, oh my god, it's Terry Stone. But yeah, with that, buddy, thank you for taking the time to talk. That was a great chat. Like I said, I didn't even have to ask many questions because as he spoke, it was like boom, boom, boom. He's answering everything. I'm just going to let him go. And with that, we still did 40 minutes. I got a little worried while he was going that this was going to go less than 15, but it didn't, and I'm happy about that. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Like I say, if you don't know who this man is and you're in our scene, it's very important to research what he did and the different companies. Like I say, I had the list here. It got taken down, and I can't go through all the windows right now. But One Nation was the biggest one for me because I grew up listening to those tapes that he mentioned and always wanting to throw a party as good as that. To this day, I still listen to sets. Yeah, I don't want to ramble for too long, guys. As always, thanks for tuning in. Till next time, guys, peace out.